I was at London Bridge Station last week to take a look at the new addition. It is this clock. But more than that, this is one of the first physical manifestations of the Great British Railways identity. I've seen a lot of opinions on this clock, some positive, some negative. Now, London Bridge has been rebuilt several times, the last as part of the Thameslink programme between 2009 and 2017. And now it has a big clock. I think if you have a big station, it should have a big clock. It gives people somewhere to meet, and I understand you can use it to tell the time somehow. According to Great British Railways, this site was chosen because London Bridge was the second station, after Lewisham, to have a clock connected by telegraph to the Royal Observatory at Greenwich back in 1852. I don't know what they had against putting one at Lewisham, but I guess they didn't need one there or something like that. Actually, the whole Greenwich connection is significant. I often talk about the fact that the railways revolutionised life in Britain, and indeed across the world, but I don't really talk about the details of that. One of the ways railways changed the way in which we live is that they standardised time. Before the railways came along, every town and city operated according to their own local time. Most of the time, there's that word again, that didn't make much difference. Because, frankly, it was unlikely that your average person would be travelling between different towns and cities, and travel times were so long anyway that a few minutes here or there didn't make much difference. Then came the railways. The pioneering railway that's been hogging the headlines this year has been the Stockton and Darlington Railway, but that railway did not use timetables. Trains were sent as and when, and if you encountered a train coming the other way, you just had to figure out which one had a priority for yourselves. Then came the Liverpool and Manchester Railway in 1830, which operated a regular passenger service with timetables. The other thing about the Liverpool and Manchester Railway was that it ran between two cities, two different time zones. As the rail network expanded, the problem of different times became more and more of an issue. The Great Western Railway was the company that addressed the issue in 1840. The GWR ran from London to Bristol, but it would expand over the following decades to cover territory right up to the Midlands and right down to Cornwall. Printing a different set of timetables for every town they served was expensive and finicky, so they decided to just alter time itself. I'm pretty sure there was a Doctor Who episode like that. Anyway, the GWR synchronised all their clocks so that 4 o'clock at Paddington was 4 o'clock at Bristol or Birmingham or Troublehouse Halt. As other railways met and often ran over the same routes as the GWR, so they too adopted railway time. Plus it was just a good idea. By 1847 they were all at it. The time they adopted was Greenwich Mean Time, and in 1880 the rest of the country followed suit, which demonstrates pretty well how important the railways had become in the last 50 years. It's perhaps slightly ironic that GMT became the standard, because in the early days the chaps at the Royal Observatory were a little dubious about this railroad business. In 1825 they'd objected to the proposed London and Woolwich Railway, because they feared it interfering with their delicate instruments. Not long after, the London and Greenwich Railway came along. This became London's first commuter railway and was to run from London Bridge to Greenwich. This too caused some concern to the Royal Observatory. So before the railway was opened, a number of tests were carried out to see just how much vibration these trains were likely to cause. The first test was carried out on the Liverpool and Manchester Railway, but this was pretty useless. The ground conditions were nothing like those at Greenwich, the trains were far heavier, and just generally, why would you test for London in Manchester? Come on, man. In the second half of 1835, a series of tests were carried out on the actual London and Greenwich Railway, then under construction. These ranged from complex tests involving intricate instruments to just placing a glass of water on the sleepers and seeing what happened. In February 1836, the conclusion was reached that the trains probably wouldn't be a problem for the most part. However, the Astronomer Royal was to be given the power to have trains stopped if they needed to take any particularly sensitive readings. The railway opened for business in 1836. In 1845 it was leased by the South Eastern Railway, which, to all intents and purposes, made it part of that company's network. The South Eastern was one of the first railways to adopt the new electric telegraph, although it had been tried on the Great Western Railway and the London and Blackwall Railway before that. And that's how Lewisham and London Bridge's clocks came to be hooked up to the Royal Observatory. But enough about clocks in general. What about this clock? Well, it's a symbol of Great British Railways, the organisation that's taking over the passenger franchises of Great Britain, effectively renationalising them. I've talked many times about this organisation and the potential pluses and minuses. I refer you to those videos wherever they are. I think the chaps at Great British Railways are taking a leaf out of Network South East's book. Network South East was a branding initiative carried out from 1986 onwards by British Rail. The aim of Network South East was to act as a shot in the arm for the commuter lines serving London and the South East. The busiest lines in Britain, yet they'd been allowed to fall into disrepair and disrepute. Many of the early changes were simple, for instance, giving stations a coat of red paint. You can still see this in a lot of places. My favourite is at Wadden Marsh, where the station is long gone but the lampposts still wear faded Network South East red. Clocks were also a big part of the rebranding. Chris Green, the managing director of Network South East, noticed that there was no consistency to the clocks across the network. They were different ages, often they kept different times, and sometimes they were totally missing. So new clocks were installed. Mechanical clocks, modelled after digital clocks. They kept 24-hour time, they were easy to read, and, perhaps most importantly, they represented investment in the network. For those of us who use Network South East, the rhythmic clacking of these devices is firmly imprinted on our memories. At Charing Cross they even introduced a purely digital recreation of one. So, clocks are powerfully symbolic on the railways for many reasons. This clock was designed by the agency Design Bridge and Partners, but the individual visual elements of it are derived from the old days of British Rail. Instead of a second hand, it has two arrows which make their way around the clock. On the 0 and 30-second marks, they unite to form the British Rail double arrow sign. The agency described this as a subtle yet powerful metaphor which speaks to the constant flow and convergence of journeys, which... how can I put this? It sounds like marketing babble to me. Guys, you can just say, we thought it looked cool. It's okay, I think it looks cool too. I don't know, I think this tendency to use flowery art school language alienates more people than it impresses. You know, speaking as someone who's no stranger to using overly pretentious language. The double arrow first showed up in 1965. When British Rail, or British Railways as it was known, was formed in 1948, it was very much a steam age organisation. Its early symbols were heraldic. This seemed old-fashioned by the 1960s and not the go-ahead image the railways wanted to promote. So the Design Research Institute was brought in to brainstorm ideas. The double arrow logo was designed by Jerry Barney, a draftsman at the unit, who came up with it as a quick sketch on the way to work. He didn't initially attach any special meaning to it, but when British Rail unveiled it, they stated that it represented two-way track. It was an inspired symbol in many ways. It's instantly recognisable, easy to reproduce and unique, yet also simple. In fact, it outlasted British Rail itself. It's still used as a symbol for stations and, of course, Great British Railways have made it official once again. But the double arrow wasn't the only thing British Rail gave us. The numerals on the clock are in Rail Alphabet 2, which is derived from... well, it's derived from Rail Alphabet. This was a typeface designed by Jock Kinnear and Margaret Calvert, the people who gave us the transport typeface that's used on road signs in the UK. They'd been working on the Health alphabet for use in the NHS, which was designed to be clearly legible by pedestrians, and applied the same basic principles to their Rail alphabet, which was soon in use across the network. Margaret Calvert returned in 2020 to spruce the original design up, in partnership with Henrik Kuber, and that became the more modern Rail Alphabet 2. I have seen a number of people complaining that the clock doesn't include a conventional seconds display, but let's be real, if you're so close to the time of your train's departure that the number of seconds actually matters, you're probably not going to make your train. Well, not without sprinting, which is not safe. The clocks on the platforms will include the seconds display, although I should point out that the concept of seconds being displayed on platform clocks was only introduced by Network Southeast to emphasize the punctuality of their services. It's not some time immemorial thing. If it sounds like I'm being overly critical, let me just say that I actually do like the design. It does everything it needs to do. I would imagine it'll take a long time to get these rolled out everywhere. It's probably going to be an as and when thing as refurbishments take place across the network. In many places, you'll first see it on existing digital departure boards. Something I've not seen people talking about is the use of a red circle, which is quite similar to the underground roundel, which was introduced to help station names stand out against busy backgrounds. And I think the red circles here will fulfill the same practical function in many settings. Will these clocks go on to become design classics like the Double Arrow or the Network Southeast clock? Only time will tell. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please do leave a like and consider subscribing for more. As well as Network Rail's press releases and the BBC and Guardian articles on this clock, my main sources were London's First Railway by R.H.G. Thomas, the Network Southeast story by Chris Green and Mike Vincent, and Arrows of Desire by Nick Job. I would like as ever to thank my donors on Ko-fi, on Patreon, and here on YouTube for your generous support. You are the Rail Alphabet 2 to my need for wayfinding. And I'll see you all again very soon. Cheerio.